Good morning. I want to start today by talking about a fear that most people in their late 70s and early 80s keep locked away in a quiet corner of their minds. It is not necessarily the fear of death. For many of my patients, it is the fear of the slow, agonizing slide into dependency. It is that cold realization that one day you might not be the one driving the car. You might not be the one making the decisions. You might find yourself living a life dictated by the schedules and whims of others, watching your world shrink until it fits within the four walls of a single room. For decades, the medical establishment has unintentionally fueled this fear. Your doctors, your family, and even the media have whispered the same patronizing advice into your ear. Slow down, take it easy, do not overexert yourself, and simply accept that your best days are a fading memory in the rearview mirror. They treat aging as a series of inevitable subtractions. But what if I told you that this advice is not just outdated, it is biologically regressive? I am Dr. Ethan Cole. For the last 25 years, I've specialized in geriatric resilience. I've spent thousands of hours with men and women between the ages of 75 and 90, and I have witnessed a phenomenon that the latest peer-reviewed research is only now beginning to quantify. There is a distinct group of seniors who seem to defy the gravitational pull of aging. These are the individuals who are still hiking, still managing their own finances, and still possessing a mental sharpness that rivals people 30 years their junior. They do not have access to a fountain of youth or secret expensive medications. Instead, they adhere to a very specific, evidence-based architecture of daily behavior. A landmark long-term study conducted by the Stanford Center on Longevity followed over 4,000 adults in the 70 to 90 age bracket for more than a decade. The results were nothing short of a revolution in geriatric medicine. Those who maintain just 4 or more of the specific daily habits I am going to share with you today were 61% less likely to experience what we call accelerated functional decline. 61%. In medical terms, that is the difference between an independent life of dignity and a premature move into assisted living. That is the difference between being a participant in your family's life and being a spectator. Now, before we begin our countdown of these 6 habits, I have to give you a warning. The number one habit on this list, the one we will cover at the very end, is the single most powerful predictor of cognitive independence after age 75. It has nothing to do with what you eat or how many steps you take. In fact, it is something that almost no primary care physician talks about. But the data from Johns Hopkins suggests it is the key to maintaining your brain's structural integrity well into your 90s. So please, stay with me until the final minute, because that one insight could fundamentally alter the trajectory of your next 20 years. Before we dive into our first habit, I want to ask you to do something. This is a community of people who refuse to just fade away. Drop your age in the comments below. Whether you are 72, 85, or 93, let us know you are here. I read every single comment on this channel because your stories of resilience are exactly why I do this work. Now, let us move to habit number 6, which addresses a biological crisis that most seniors are experiencing right now without even knowing it. Let us talk about a process I call strategic hydration. Now, I know what you are thinking. You have heard about drinking water your entire life. But here is the dangerous truth that most people over 75 do not realize. Hydration at age 80 is a completely different biological challenge than hydration at age 40. As we cross the threshold of 70, our bodies undergo a dramatic shift in how they manage fluids. First, your kidneys lose approximately 40% of their filtering efficiency, meaning they have to work significantly harder to maintain the delicate balance of electrolytes in your blood. Second, and perhaps most dangerously, your brain's thirst signaling mechanism becomes blunted. This is known as adypsia. You can be clinically dehydrated, with your blood thickening and your brain cells shrinking, and yet your body will not tell you that you are thirsty. Think of your circulatory system as a complex irrigation network. In your younger years, the water flowed fast and clean. But as we age, the volume drops. When that river runs low, the delivery of oxygen to your brain slows down, and the removal of metabolic waste products stalls. This leads to what I call the silent slide, a state of chronic, mild dehydration that causes brain fog, dizziness, and a massive increase in the risk of falls. A major study published in the European Journal of Nutrition involving over 3,500 seniors found that those who maintained a consistent fluid intake of at least 1.8 liters per day showed a 38% lower rate of urinary tract infections and, more importantly, a 29% reduction in falls. Dehydration impairs your proprioception, your brain's ability to know where your body is in space. After 75, a simple glass of water is not just a drink, it is an anti-fall medication. Let me tell you about a patient of mine named Eleanor. Eleanor was 79 when she first came to my clinic. Her daughter was convinced Eleanor was developing early-stage dementia. She was experiencing frequent bouts of confusion, her balance was so poor she had stopped walking to her mailbox, and she complained that her thinking felt like it was wrapped in heavy wool. After reviewing Eleanor's lab work, I realized she wasn't suffering from a neurological disease, she was suffering from chronic intracellular dehydration. Her brain was literally parched. We implemented the strategic hydration habit. I had her drink 16 ounces of room temperature water the very moment she woke up, before she even touched her coffee. Why? Because the body loses a massive amount of fluid overnight through respiration. In seniors, this deficit is 30% higher than in younger adults. I also had her add a tiny pinch of high-quality sea salt to that morning glass. This is the Osmotic Reset. After 75, your kidneys struggle to retain sodium, and without that trace amount of salt, plain water often just passes straight through your system without actually entering your cells where it is needed. Within 3 weeks, the dementia disappeared. Eleanor's confusion vanished, her energy levels tripled, and her balance stabilized. She wasn't losing her mind, she was just losing her fluid. The protocol is simple: 16 ounces first thing in the morning with a pinch of mineral salt. Then, a small glass with every meal and one in the mid-afternoon. Do not wait for thirst. Thirst is a liar after age 75. You must hydrate by the clock, not by your cravings. This is how you keep the delivery trucks of your bloodstream moving at full speed, ensuring your brain and muscles get the fuel they need to keep you independent. Now, keeping your blood flowing is vital, but what good is that flow if the muscles it feeds are disappearing? That brings us to habit number 5, and the science of why your daily walk is no longer enough to save your life. As we move to habit number 5, I need to address a very common and very dangerous misconception. I cannot tell you how many times a patient in their 80s has told me, "Dr. Cole, I'm doing great. I take a 30-minute walk every single morning." While I applaud any movement, I have to be blunt. After the age of 75, walking is simply not enough to save your life. Walking is an aerobic activity that supports your heart, but it does almost nothing to stop the most aggressive predator of senior independence: sarcopenia. Sarcopenia is the progressive and involuntary loss of skeletal muscle mass and strength. After age 70, you are not just losing muscle, you are losing the fast-twitch muscle fibers that allow you to catch yourself if you stumble. But the science goes even deeper than just physical strength. When you engage in resistance-based movement, meaning any activity where your muscles must push or pull against a force, your muscles act as an endocrine organ. They release tiny pharmacy-like molecules called myokines. Myokines are essentially medicine molecules. They travel through your bloodstream to your brain, where they stimulate the growth of new neurons and reduce systemic inflammation. This is the Myokine Shield. Without resistance training, your internal pharmacy closes down. You aren't just getting weaker, Your entire biological system is losing its ability to repair itself. The challenge we face is a phenomenon called anabolic resistance. As we age, our muscles become deaf to the signals that tell them to grow. A 30-year-old can lift a light weight and see results. A 75-year-old requires a much louder signal to achieve the same effect. I want to share the story of Arthur, a patient of mine who was 82 years old. Arthur had begun using a walker because he felt unsteady. He had accepted that his days of working in his prize-winning rose garden were over. When we tested his leg strength, he was in the bottom 10% for his age. We didn't tell Arthur to walk more. We put him on a specific resistance protocol using simple elastic bands and wall-based movements. We focused on time under tension. We had him perform slow, controlled movements that forced his muscles to work for 40 to 60 seconds at a time. This constant tension is what finally breaks through anabolic resistance. After just 12 weeks, the transformation was staggering. Arthur didn't just regain his balance, he regained his life. He traded the walker for a cane, and eventually, he put the cane in the closet and went back to his garden. He told me he felt solid again, as if his legs were once again anchored to the earth. Your prescription is 2 to 3 sessions per week, 20 minutes each. Focus on your largest muscle groups, your glutes, your thighs, and your back. Use resistance bands or even just your own body weight with slow, intentional squats against a wall. The synergy tip here is crucial. Perform your resistance movements in the late morning or early afternoon, and follow them immediately with the protein intake we will discuss in a few moments. By timing these together, you take advantage of the brief window where your muscles are most ears open to repair. Resistance is the point. If it doesn't feel slightly challenging, it isn't triggering the Myokine Shield. Now let us turn our attention to the night. Habit number 4 is the maintenance of a consistent, purposeful sleep architecture. For decades, we believed that sleep was simply a period of rest. We now know that for the aging brain, sleep is actually a period of intense cleaning. Your brain has a specialized waste clearance system called the glymphatic system. Think of it like a biological dishwasher. During deep, slow-wave sleep, the spaces between your brain cells expand, and cerebrospinal fluid flushes through, washing away metabolic debris, specifically a protein called amyloid beta, which is the primary component of the plaques found in Alzheimer's disease. The tragedy of aging after 75 is that our sleep architecture naturally begins to crumble. Your brain produces up to 70% less melatonin than it did in your youth. Your periods of deep, restorative sleep drop by as much as 80%. This is why so many seniors wake up feeling unrefreshed or foggy. Their brain's dishwasher didn't run its full cycle. I remember a patient named Vivian, 76, who came to me complaining of chronic inflammation and a persistent mental heaviness. She was sleeping 8 hours a night, but she was waking up 4 or 5 times. Her sleep was fragmented, meaning her glymphatic system never had enough continuous time to perform a deep wash. We made 3 specific changes to Vivian's environment. First, we set her thermostat to 65 degrees Fahrenheit. As we age, our body's ability to regulate its internal temperature weakens. A cool room is a biological signal to the brain that it is time for deep sleep. Second, we implemented a digital sunset. 60 minutes before bed, Vivian turned off all screens. The blue light from tablets and TVs isn't the only problem. It's the mental stimulation. It keeps the prefrontal cortex hot when it needs to be cooling down. Finally, we practiced a technique called slow diaphragmatic breathing for 10 minutes before bed. This activates the vagus nerve and shifts the body from fight or flight mode into rest and repair mode. The results for Vivian were life-changing. By stabilizing her sleep window, going to bed and waking up at the exact same time every day, even on weekends, she increased her deep sleep duration by nearly 40%. Her inflammation markers, specifically her C-reactive protein levels, dropped significantly within 2 months. The synergy tip for sleep is this: Get 15 minutes of natural sunlight in your eyes as early as possible in the morning. This resets your circadian clock and tells your brain exactly when to start the countdown for melatonin production 14 hours later. You cannot have a clean brain without a consistent, cool, and dark sleep sanctuary. We have talked about movement and sleep, but now we must talk about the fuel that holds the entire structure together. Habit number 3 is the deliberate, distributed intake of high-quality protein. There is a very dangerous myth circulating in the senior community that you need less food and specifically less protein as you get older. This is a scientific falsehood that is sending thousands of seniors into frailty prematurely. The truth is that because of the anabolic resistance I mentioned earlier, a 75-year-old actually needs significantly more protein per pound of body weight than a 30-year-old to maintain the same muscle mass. Think of your body like a house that is constantly under repair. Every day, old bricks are being removed and new bricks must be put in. Protein is the bricks. If you don't provide enough bricks, the house starts to fall apart. But it isn't just about the total amount of protein. It is about the leucine trigger. Leucine is a specific amino acid that acts as the on switch for muscle protein synthesis. Research from the Mayo Clinic and other major institutions suggests that for a senior, you need approximately 30 grams of protein in a single sitting to provide enough leucine to flip that switch. If you only eat 10 or 15 grams, the switch stays off, and that protein is simply burned for energy rather than used for repair. This is where my patient Samuel, age 84, was struggling. Samuel was eating what he thought was a healthy diet: toast and tea for breakfast, a small salad for lunch, and a decent dinner. But his muscles were wasting away. He was front-loading his day with carbohydrates and only getting his bricks at the very end of the day. We restructured Samuel's diet using the protein-first method. We ensured he hit that 30-gram threshold at breakfast, lunch, and dinner. For breakfast, we moved from toast to Greek yogurt with nuts or eggs. For lunch, we added a clean source of poultry or fish. The change in Samuel's physical sturdiness was visible within 6 weeks. His grip strength, one of the most powerful markers of overall longevity, increased by 20%. He felt more energetic because his body wasn't constantly tearing down its own muscle tissue just to find the amino acids it needed to function. The protocol is simple. Aim for 25 to 35 grams of protein at every meal. Do not skip breakfast. Breakfast is when your body is most starved for repair materials after the overnight fast. The synergy tip here is to pair your protein with a source of vitamin C. Whether it's a squeeze of lemon on your fish or a few slices of bell pepper, vitamin C is the essential cofactor for collagen synthesis. This doesn't just help your muscles, it strengthens your tendons, your joint cartilage, and even your skin. It is the glue that keeps the protein bricks in place. We are halfway through our list, and we are moving from the physical into the deeply social and neurological. Next, we will discuss the habit that is as powerful as quitting smoking, and finally, the number one habit that can actually grow your brain after age 80. As we move to habit number 2, I want to talk about a toxin that is more prevalent in the senior community than high blood pressure or high cholesterol. It is a silent killer that doctors rarely write a prescription for, yet it is every bit as lethal as a pack of cigarettes. I am talking about chronic social isolation. Now, please listen closely, because this is not about feeling lonely. This is about the fundamental biology of your nervous system. A massive meta-analysis from Brigham Young University, covering over 300,000 individuals, found that social isolation increases your risk of mortality by an amount equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes every single day. When you are socially isolated, your body enters a state of chronic vigilance. Your levels of cortisol rise. Your levels of interleukin-6, a major marker of systemic inflammation, spike. But most tragically, your brain begins to prune its own connections. The human brain is a social organ. It requires the complex, unpredictable input of another human being to stay electrically active. Without that engagement, the hippocampus, the area of your brain responsible for memory, actually begins to shrink. Let me tell you about Beatrice. Beatrice was 80 years old and had been a vibrant schoolteacher for 40 years. After she lost her husband and her closest friends moved away, she withdrew. She stopped attending her book club. She spent her days watching television and talking only to her cat. Within a year, her daughter noticed a frightening decline. Beatrice was forgetting her keys, repeating the same stories every 10 minutes, and had lost interest in her appearance. When Beatrice came to see me, her cognitive scores were borderline for early-stage dementia. But again, I suspected this wasn't a disease of the brain. It was a disease of the environment. We implemented the oxytocin anchor. I didn't just tell her to be social. I gave her a specific prescription for intergenerational engagement. We found a local program where she could spend 2 hours a week mentoring young children who were struggling with reading. This forced Beatrice's brain to engage in high-level sequencing, emotional regulation, and real-time problem solving. More importantly, it triggered the release of oxytocin, a hormone that acts as a natural buffer against cortisol and inflammation. 8 months later, Beatrice was a different person. Her memory scores had stabilized, and her verbal fluency had returned. She wasn't cured of aging, but she had re-anchored her nervous system to the world. Your prescription is one meaningful, in-person social interaction every single day. A phone call is good, but a face-to-face conversation is better. It forces your brain to process nonverbal cues, tone of voice, and facial expressions, all of which require massive amounts of neural processing power. The synergy tip for social engagement is to combine it with physical movement. Take a social walk with a neighbor or join a group exercise class for seniors. Research from the University of British Columbia shows that the combination of social interaction and physical activity produces a synergistic spike in brain-derived neurotrophic factor, or BDNF. Think of BDNF as Miracle-Gro for your brain cells. You get more of it when you move and talk at the same time than you do from doing either alone. We have finally reached the number one habit. This is the one I promised you at the beginning. This is the behavior that fewer than 12% of adults over 75 maintain, yet it is the single greatest predictor of whether you will remain cognitively independent into your 90s. The habit is the daily practice of productive discomfort through novel cognitive challenge. Now, I want to be very clear here. Doing crossword puzzles you are already good at is not a challenge. Reading books in a genre you have enjoyed for 50 years is not a challenge. These activities are cognitive maintenance. They are fine, but they do not build new neural pathways. After age 75, your brain is an expert at conserving energy. It wants to use the old, well-worn highways of thought because they are efficient. But when you only use the old highways, the rest of your brain's roadmap begins to disappear. This is how we lose our cognitive reserve. Cognitive reserve is your brain's backup capacity. It is the extra hardware that allows a person to have the physical signs of aging in their brain, but show zero symptoms of memory loss or confusion. To build cognitive reserve after 75, you must engage in the Plasticity protocol. This means learning a skill that is genuinely difficult for you, something that makes you feel a little frustrated, a little slow, and a little out of your element. That frustration you feel when you are trying to learn a new language, a new musical instrument, or a complex new digital skill, that is the feeling of your brain forming new synapses. That is the feeling of neuroplasticity. I remember Henry, an 81-year-old retired civil engineer. Henry was brilliant, but he was stuck in a rigid routine. He felt his world was getting smaller, and he was struggling with word finding. He felt his mental sharpness was dulling. I challenged Henry to pick up something he had zero experience with: digital photography and complex photo editing. Henry had to learn how to operate a modern camera, understand the physics of light, and master complicated software on a computer. He told me several times in the first month that he wanted to quit because it was too hard. I told him, "Henry, the fact that it is hard is exactly why it is working." By the 6-month mark, Henry's brain fog had cleared. An MRI scan showed that the white matter integrity in his prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that usually thins out with age, was significantly more robust than it had been a year prior. He had built a backup hard drive for his mind. Your protocol is the 90-day new skill cycle. Every 3 months, choose one thing you have never done. It could be learning to play the ukulele, speaking basic Italian, or learning how to cook an entirely new cuisine that requires new techniques. Spend 20 to 30 minutes every single day in that state of productive discomfort. The synergy tip for the Plasticity protocol is to pair your learning sessions with an increased intake of omega-3 fatty acids, specifically DHA. DHA is the primary structural fat in your brain's cell membranes. Think of it as the oil that allows the machinery of your brain to reconfigure itself. When you provide your brain with the bricks of DHA and the signal of new learning, you create the perfect environment for cognitive resilience. We have covered a lot of ground today. We have talked about strategic hydration to keep your inner river flowing. We have discussed the resistance movement needed to trigger your Myokine Shield. We have looked at the glymphatic wash of deep sleep, the Leucine trigger of precision protein, the Oxytocin anchor of social connection, and finally, the Plasticity protocol of new learning. If you look at these 6 habits, you will notice a common thread. None of them are about taking it easy. None of them are about slowing down. In fact, they are all about leaning into life with a renewed sense of intensity. I want to speak directly to you now, not just as a doctor, but as someone who cares deeply about this community. You are living in a culture that often tries to make you invisible. It is a culture that suggests that after a certain age, your contribution is over and your decline is inevitable. I am here to tell you that the science says otherwise. Your body and your brain possess a stubborn, beautiful capacity for resilience that does not expire on your 75th or 85th birthday. You have the power to stay in the driver's seat of your own life. You have the power to be the one who remembers the birthdays, who tells the stories, and who maintains the independence that you have worked your entire life to earn. But this independence is not a gift. It is a discipline. It is the result of the small daily choices you make. It is the choice to drink that water in the morning, to lift that resistance band when you're tired, to reach out to a friend when you'd rather stay in, and to struggle with a new skill when it would be easier to just watch the news. You are worth that effort. Your story is not finished yet. In fact, for many of you, this can be the most intentional and rewarding chapter of your entire life. Before you go, I want to invite you to join this journey with us. If this information has given you hope, or if it has challenged you to change your daily routine, please subscribe to this channel. My mission is to bring you the truth about aging, the science-backed, actionable truth that you won't always hear in a 15-minute doctor's appointment. Please, leave a comment below. Tell me which of these 6 habits you are going to start tomorrow. I want to see this community supporting one another, sharing our successes, and even our struggles. I read every single one of your words. Take care of yourself. Stay hydrated, stay strong, keep learning, and never, ever believe the lie that you are too old to be great. I am Dr. Ethan Cole, and I will see you in the next video.